All right, so these are coefficient matrices. So they're not systems, they're just the numbers in front of the x's. And I want to get them in reduced echelon form and find their pivot positions. All right, so let's remind ourselves. Reduced echelon form is RREF. Echelon form is just this one, right? So RREF means I need to get 1 in the leading entry. All right, so there's 1 in my leading entry, so I need to get zeros below it. So I'm going to multiply row 1 by -2 and add it to row 2, and at the same time, I'm going to multiply row 1 by -3 and add it to row 3. So I'm going to write this first row down. So multiply by -2 and add, -2 and add, -2 and add, -2 and add, -3 and add, -3 and add, -3 and add, and -3, oops, that's supposed to be a -3, okay. And then -3 is -24, so -12, all right. Okay, so I want to get a 1 in this leading entry, so I'm thinking multiply row 2 by a -1/2. So 1, 2, 4, 8 from the first row, 0, 0, 1, 4. And then I'm just going to, while I'm at it, I'm just going to multiply this last row by -1/3, just to make life easier. So 0, 1, and 4. Look at that, will you? All right, so if I take row 2 and multiply it by -1 and add it to row 3, remember you always have to add the rows together. So the negative always has to be multiplied times the first row. So 0, 0, 1, 4, 0, 0, 0, 0. Okay, so there's my leading entry, the 1. There's my leading entry. So I need to get zeros above and below my leading entry. So I need to get a 0 in this position. So if I multiply row 2 by -4 and add it to row 1. So I'll put the last row in first. I'll put this one in next. Okay, multiply by -4 and add doesn't change the first two positions, so that gives me a 0. Multiply by -4, that gives me a -16, plus an 8, that gives me -8. All right, so this is the RREF, or the reduced echelon. These are the pivot positions. So circle the pivot positions and identify the pivot columns. So these are the 2 pivot columns. All right, let's do this one. This one looks very almost done for us. So I've got leading entries of 1 already. So I need to next, I'm going to get a 0 in this position. So I'm going to multiply row 2 by 3 and add it to row 1. So 1, 2, 3. Carry that along. 2, 3. 1, 9, 4. 1, 0, 0, -4, 1. Okay, so here I am, finally at the first one. So multiply by 3 and add gives me a 0. That stays 0. That stays -1. This stays 0. Multiply by 3 and add, that makes it a 1. All right, so there's my pivot of 1 with all zeros below and above. This pivot 1 has zeros above and below. This pivot 1 has zeros below. I just need to get a 0 right here. So I'm going to add row 3 to row 1. So if I add row 3 to row 1, I'll get a 0 here. Add this to this, I'd get a 9 here. Add 4 to 1, and I get a 5. And all the other rows carry along. 0, 0, 0, 1, 9, 4. And my row of zeros at the bottom. Okay, so here are my pivot positions. And these 3 would be my pivot columns. All right, one more. So I need to get zeros below this pivot. So if I multiply row 1 by -4 and add it to row 2. This first row stays the same. Multiply by -4 and add, that gives me a 0. Multiply by -4, -16, and add 4 is -12. And then I'm just going to carry this along for a second. All right, so now I'm going to multiply row 1 by -2 and add it to row 3. So this stays the same. That stays. So multiply by -2 and add. -2, that gives me a -8 plus a 2, so it's -6. All right, so now I'm going to multiply row 2 by a -1/12. So 1 and 4, 0 and 1, 0 and -6. So then I can multiply row 2 by 6 and add it to row 3. And one last thing, so here are my 2 pivots. I need to get a 0 above it. So if I multiply row 2 by -4 and add it to row 1. So that gives me a 0. And there it is. So these are my 2 pivot positions, and these are my 2 pivot columns.